Djinn is a debut novel of author Laura Catherine, an Aussie author from the U-Beauty city of Melbourne. What I love about their profile picture on their Goodreads account is it's them at the Hobbit houses in New Zealand. Super jealous. I've always wanted to go there. So the book is 320 pages. It's published in 2013 and it currently has a 3.78 star rating at the time of writing on Goodreads. No, not bad really. Probably higher than I'd rate it, but I'm just an old bastard who hates the world and only joy comes from complaining. So I suppose take my review with a grain of salt. We all like different things and I'm supposed to be okay with that. I'll go through the synopsis first. I usually don't read synopsis when I look at a book. I'm more of a cover person and recommendation. But because I'm reviewing it, I figured I should probably read it. But I don't know. I feel like this synopsis kind of gives away the only plot point of the book. Not that I really think this book has much plot anyway. But the synopsis goes as following. She has spent her whole life on the run with her father, but will a handsome boy who can shift into a Labrador be her undoing? Kyra Lockhart is starting over. Again. New town, new name. Looking for a friend and wanting to settle down, the 17-year-old nerd befriends the charming Labrador who bounds into her life. And when the playful pup turns out to be a handsome boy with golden eyes that match hers, Kyra is dragged into a world of magic she never knew existed. Introduced to her real family, Kyra discovers she's a Djinn and has magic of her own. But there are politics at play, royal families, classes of Djinn, and rules that Kyra would have to break in order to be with her golden boy. Can Kyra be with the man she loves, even if it's forbidden? It's not really a good sign when your synopsis has grammatical errors. Okay. I'll do some trigger warnings. I couldn't see a list of trigger warnings, but maybe I just didn't look hard enough. So I'll say a few that I saw in there. So there's death, death of important character, violence, yelling, emotional abuse, kidnapping, blood and gore. If I've missed anything, I'm sorry, but I think that mainly covers them. All right. Well, with all that out of the way, let's read. So Djinn starts out with a man called Malcolm Lockhart driving through the night in a hurricane with a precious package in the back seat. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's a child. Get your mind out of the gutter, you filthy. But this child is different. Something that will be insufferably shoved down your throat the entire book. Because she has glowing yellow eyes. Now it sets up like this guy's fond of her, maybe her father, since he calls her his little Kyra. That's her name. And fondly compares her to her mother. Anyway, he nearly runs down a figure in the road and ends up crashing his car, blacking out. And when he gains consciousness, Kyra is gone. Why they took the child and didn't kill him, I don't know. Because these characters did things that make sense, then it would, there'd be no story. He gets out of the car and sees Kyra in the arms of a strange man. We find out his name is Grant, in a trench coat talking on the phone to someone. And he literally says, him? He's lying unconscious and bleeding in the car. Don't worry. Babe, I think you'll need to be more worried. Malcolm somehow sneaks up on the guy and they fight. Malcolm ends up killing Grant. And two men end up arriving and Malcolm hides. He recognizes one of them as a man called Ivan, who rightfully calls out Grant's stupidity. That idiot. I know this has to do with Malcolm. Grant should have killed him. Yeah, he should have. Why didn't he? Anyway, Malcolm evades them, steals their car and escapes. from now on, they would be on the run. So then we time jump like 15 years later. Kyra is now a teenager living with her dad. And they have this training session in their front yard, and it gets a little weird with Kyra thinking that her dad is fit, muscular, and handsome. Is it weird? I feel a little icky about a teenager thinking about a man in his 40s who is said to be her father. She also talks about all the scars he tries to hide running down his body. Like, ma'am, why are you watching your dad change? It's weird. I don't like it. She loses in the training session because she sucks. I'm being cynical, sorry. And now it's time for him to say something weird. So she's showing him her muscles, and he's like, "You're only 17, Kyra. You're still growing into your body." Yeesh. There are some more scenes like that, like where he strokes her cheek and he calls her my girl. Like, it's all like a little bit too much, a little too suggestive, and I don't like it. The start of the book is a little slow. They do their training, go for a run, do some homework, watch Karate Kid. I don't know why they name dropped it. We do end up getting some backstory. Thank God. So they've been on the run. She doesn't know why. When she's 7, she nearly gets taken from a local playground when a man in a trench coat literally takes off with her before getting stopped by her father, and they flee. She says there's been more attempts, but none as bad as that one. An interesting backstory that doesn't really matter at all, because Kyra is so different from the other girls and so edgy and reckless. Because why does she have to be so careful all the time? It's not like she's literally being followed everywhere and goes by strangers that want to do unthinkable things to her, and nearly did. But no, I'm an edgy teenager. Like, this rebellious attitude she kind of adopts, but not really. It doesn't make much sense. Like, she knows the dangers of her complacency. She nearly got kidnapped. So what does she do when she knows what the dangers are of the world around her? She wakes up from her recurrent nightmare and goes for an early morning run. Alone. Without telling her father where she's going. Like, it just makes so much sense. He wouldn't like me heading out by myself so early. I'd always followed almost all of the rules he'd set for me to keep me safe. But really, I could go into town on my own. Huh? Did we not just get the same backstory? You are literally in hiding from big, bad men who want to kidnap you. You should also be concerned about your own safety. She runs into a dog. It becomes relevant later. You also read the synopsis with me. She gets home, her dad is pissed. I wonder why, and he gives her a lecture. But she doesn't listen. Because it's not like she's in danger or anything. Like, I totally get wanting to characterize your character this way. I think it could work, but it won't work when you actually have her having already faced the danger. Like, she knows what could happen if she screws up. It would work more if she didn't. If her dad had kept her in the dark and dragged her around to town after town, forcing her to hide for a reason that he won't disclose for her. Like, that's a recipe for a rebelling teenager and would make sense. This does not. Kyra would be more likable because I would be able to sympathize with her and understand why she's having these emotions. But right now, I just think she's an idiot and do not care whether she lives or dies. Kyra feels like a lost cause. She goes to school where she really shows off her not like other girls pick me attitude. She's sporty, she's nerdy, but oh no, she can't do maths, that's so different. She goes on a rant about how education isn't important anyway, because she's resigned herself to this lifestyle. So, like, why are you being so rebellious? She does she says multiple times that she likes the lifestyle. She says here that she has no ambition, but then she tells her dad how they don't need to be so cautious because they've been doing this for a long time, and goes out on runs alone. Like, why are you rebelling? What is your reason for doing anything? Are you accepting of the lifestyle, or do you not like the lifestyle and you want to get out of it, so you're rebelling? I don't understand. They end up going to the gym, where she can continue to show off her not like other girl abilities. Sergeant Barnes, he's the PE teacher, makes us do push-ups, sit-ups and laps around the oval. By the end of the warm-up, most students, especially the girls, were ready to quit. I'm sorry, what? Ooh, precious women can't run like me, I'm so unique. A lot of the boys saw sport as a way to test their strength, and I saw it as a way to prove myself better than them. Not that I didn't like boys. No, of course not. Had to definitely clarify that. No sapphic love here. Here we get introduced to Pike, a hot, muscular punk boy in jeans and a leather jacket, who everyone swoons over. Except Kyra, of course, because she doesn't get bogged down by your disgusting human emotions. They get talking, which is just so strange for Kyra, because she never talks to anyone, because she's so different and everyone hates her because she's so much better than everybody else. Can you tell I hate this character? and not in a good way. They talk about their parents, their lives, and then class is over and they leave. But not without those females talking bad about Kyra and making sure Pike doesn't collude with the school's punching bag. Ugh. School's over and we find out about another character, a goth girl who is hanging out with Pike, who has too much eyeliner, something she makes sure to point out that she would never do. The girl doesn't seem impressed because, we can't have girls who are in competition actually be nice. The goth girl only watched me with dark eyes, not moving a muscle. I shrugged, putting it all down to girls being weird. Most of them were. Girls seemed to naturally dislike me. I think it was because I was sporty and got more attention from boys, but obviously they were mistaking the interest for attraction, when clearly it was jealousy of my athletic style. Either way, I hadn't ever had a girlfriend, and I never really wanted one. Did I say... Oh, sorry. I was getting excited. I was like, sapphic love? No, friend, that's a girl. Ah, yes, that's the reason. Definitely not your insufferable attitude and you being a raging misogynist. No, it's everybody else, because you're perfect. Like, is this character creation? Is this so one note, like a basic playable character that has no depth? So it makes it easier for young, vulnerable girls to self-insert themselves into, so the author doesn't have to do any actual work developing a well-rounded character. Because why would you have to do that when the character is just you? And you already know your personality, values, morals, and backstory. I know, I'm just being critical. I just find it so frustrating when I see women written like this in books directed at young women. It's so manipulative, it's sad. Sorry, one rant over. More to come, I promise you. Let's continue. So she walks home alone. Why? Obviously because she's definitely not someone who has to worry about being kidnapped randomly off the street. She ends up meeting that dog again, who mysteriously leaves when he notices her father getting home. They eat, they go to bed. Next day, we're now in chapter 6, and she reminds me, because I had forgotten, that she has golden eyes. I was just kidding about forgetting. No mention of her wearing contacts this whole time. So, like, is she just walking around freely with golden glowing eyes and no one's saying anything about it? Is she not in hiding? Like, why not cover up one of the most distinguishable attributes she has? Wouldn't that make hiding her so much easier? Like, no wonder they've had to move so much. They're idiots. She brought it up because she's asking her dad about her mum again, and he's continuing to avoid the subject. Kyra goes to school. We spend some more time in her head where she narrates more information about herself. Look, I understand how overused and misinterpreted the phrase show don't tell that armchair critics love to use all the time. I'm not judging armchair critics. I am one of you. Actually, I do judge armchair critics. I judge myself all the time. You guys are assholes. I'm an asshole. Thank you. But I do feel like this is a good example. So much time is spent inside Kyra's head, and so many opportunities are wasted where she could just do something to show her characteristics. You don't need to spoon feed us all the information. Some, yes, absolutely. We're working with words only in this means of storytelling. We have no fancy visuals and music tracks to convey our story. You're going to have to tell me stuff, I understand that. But this is just a little too much, you know. So we're in English class. We get some information about jinns through the allocation of Arabian Nights to their book list. Kyra gets paired up with the new goth girl. Her name is Mia, and they start to talk about mythical creatures. I really thought maybe we're not going down the route of competing girls, and they could actually be friends, but nope, denied. Class ends. Kyra goes to the library to get a copy of Arabian Nights and runs back into Pike. They have this interaction. So Pike says, "So do you want to hang out sometime?" "Did you just ask me out?" No one has ever asked me out. Oh, poor baby. God, not even as a joke? Are you really the sad bullied teen nobody likes? I call fake. You seem cool. We should go for dinner or a movie. You've only spoken to me twice. That's just how cool you are. What? Puke. She obviously says no because, you know, she's not like other girls. Then it's all like, I don't understand Pike at all. He's only really just met me and already wants to hang out. What? Have you never had friends? No, scratch that. You haven't, actually. You very clearly like to tell us that every chance you get. So, okay, I understand. You don't really know how these things work, but, like, come on. How do you think people get to know each other? People don't just come out of the womb best friends with people, idiot. You have to hang out with strangers. This book infuriates me more than it should, and I'm only like 50 pages in. Anyway, they say some more cringy stuff, call women some unsavory names, and Kyra dips. School finishes and she spends a few hours on a bench reading her book until it gets dark. You already know what I'm thinking. I don't think I need to say it, but I will. Why? You know how unsafe your life is. You know people are out here looking for you. Why the hell are you so flippantly blasé with your life? I don't understand. I know I'm being stupid. It's just... So she power walks home. She feels like she's being watched, so she stands her ground and Mia appears. Oh, good, a friend. Psych, she's the bad guy. I'm sorry, Kyra. We've been looking for you for a long time. I paused. They're sending teenagers after my dad now? Oh, yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned. 1, her dad always told her it's easy to spot the people coming for them because they're old men in trench coats, so they wouldn't have to worry about anyone else except people that look like that. Why the kidnappers kept up for that for 15 years and never tried to send anybody else? I don't know. Nothing makes sense and the rules are made up. That's a cool jingle. 2, Kyra for some reason also thinks they are after her dad, even though she knows she was the one kidnapped that one time, not her dad. So why does she think that? I also do not know. I've stopped caring. No, I haven't. I love complaining. I'm in my element right now. Kyra attacks Mia. She gets away and calls her dad and ends up running into Pike. A good helping hand. Psych again. He's bad too. Wow, the 2 new anime purple hair characters are bad. Did not see that one coming. They also mention a mysterious will. Ooh, men. We love men. So let's waste no more time. Bring on the men. Sorry, Broadway moment. If you know, you know. Look it up on YouTube. Bring on the men. It's gay. She ends up getting away from them after biting Pike and runs home to her father, and she sort of just lets him know what's happening. Dad, they're teenagers. Wow. His face remained unreadable. I should have known they'd try something like this. You don't think? They're too close, he muttered. They've never been this close before. Did we all just forget about that time when they literally had Kyra kicking and screaming under their arm? I'd say that was pretty close. Kyra gets in the car and her father and Team Rocket face off. Mia reveals some sonic sound power that blows out Kyra's eardrums. Pike reveals he has some ice powers and freezes Kyra's dad in place and then goes in for the kill. Dad has other plans though. Dad moved his hand to his throat and pulled a long chain up from around his neck. The chain had a small vial of something red inside. Pike bolted towards Dad with all haste, but Dad had already tipped the contents down his throat and swallowed. Flinging his hands out, a sudden gust of wind erupted from Dad's hands, blowing Pike clear across the yard and into a tree. Her father and the two fight, and it appears that he wins, so Kyra gets the car ready and waits for her father to get in, but oh no. When she looks out the front window, she notices a figure emerging from the darkness from behind her father. It was a boy, older than me, maybe 19, with hair that shone blonde despite being drenched, and a face with an amazingly chiseled jawline. He was scary, angelic, and I hate that I thought he was hot. Honey, dear, please. You and your father have just been brutally attacked. You nearly make it out, and now another figure has come to continue the attack. And you're thinking about how hot this guy is? Not the time, my God. The two fight, but of course this young boy is ridiculously skilled that he's able to dodge every attack. He tells Kyra's father cryptically to give up and that he couldn't keep her forever. Kyra runs from the car and picks up her knife with the intention to try and save her father. She lunges at the boy and they fall together in the mud, and Yao, she cannot stop thinking about this man's angelic face. It's just so overkill. Stop force feeding me this. It isn't the time and place. Instead of absorbing me into the story with the fear and tension of will they, won't they survive, I'm constantly being pulled out with an aggressive eye roll at how she's fawning over a man that she believes is trying to kill her and her father. She does, however, notice that he has the same brilliant golden eyes that she also has. During their kerfuffle, she had stabbed him, but no worry, it's just a flesh wound, and he's more concerned about her. While she's over here, gazing dreamily into the eyes of this guy, her poor father is getting beaten to a pulp by Pike again, but this mysterious golden boy with the perfect pale skin swoops in and stops him from delivering the fatal blow, reminding him to stick to the mission. Her father suddenly goes from being unconscious to telling her that he loves Kyra, to being unconscious again. Okay. And Team Rocket plus Prince Charming steal her away. We have more girl hate, with Mia being justifiably angry at Kyra, but the boys put this hysterical woman back in her place, so don't you worry. And they drive off, leaving her father half dead in the street. Because Kyra is so quippy and kooky and not like other girls, she starts mouthing off the guys, because yes, that's exactly what you want to do when you're stuck in a confined space, moving at 100 kilometers an hour with a bunch of people that nearly just killed your father. As someone who grew up on the run, this girl hasn't got any critical thinking skills to try and prolong her life. Yeah, let's just poke that bear. You can't kidnap a person and not tell them why. I deserve to know why you kidnapped me. What do you want? Will sighed, like it was such a chore to babysit me. We didn't kidnap you. I burst into laughter. That's funny. What do you call it then? An outing? A play date? We didn't kidnap you, Will repeated. Kyra, we were rescuing you. You've been missing for 16 years. 16 long years. Kyra refuses to believe him and refuses to speak after that. She eventually falls asleep and has a weird prophetic dream of some sort. She's standing outside her house that is frozen in a block of ice, trying to get back inside to retrieve a photo of her mother. Instead, her father forces her into the car, and Mia and he starts driving erratically on the icy road. Mia tells her to sit back and not look, but Kyra ignores her and forces her father to look at her, where she notices his eyes are as red as blood and was acting unlike himself. She spots Pike in the middle of the road, and to avoid him she grabs the wheel and wrenches it, causing the car to fly off the road into a forest and eventually crash back into their house. Weird dream? Yep, okay. She wakes from the dream and Mia is still a dick, and Kyra needs to use the restroom, so they pull over at a gas station. I'm going to take you to the bathroom, Will says, in a voice that was both soothing and authoritative. I don't want you trying anything. Just do what you have to, and then we'll get back in the car. This guy's kidnapped you, Kyra. He's not soothing. I make no promises, I warned, and hopped out of the car. I meant to sound threatening, but Will only smiled, like it was all a big joke. Again, woman, you're being kidnapped. You're stuck in a car with these people whose intentions are unclear, and you want to try and threaten them? This character is so very inconsistent and so very unlikable. I don't mind an unlikable character when you're showing the character as purposely being unlikable. I feel like this book actually wants me to like her. It's a very self-insert character. You know, the kind of character you think you are personally in your real life because you think you're really interesting and nobody else gets you. I really struggle with these self-insert characters because they are wildly inconsistent, shallow, and do not have their actions explained by their past. When you're just writing yourself into a book, how they act and the decisions they make sense to you because you can tie back on your own experiences and ideas. Except that the character in your story doesn't have the same experiences, so their actions and reactions are unjustified and confusing. You basically picked up your present self and inserted them into a story without all of the past to justify your personality. And then as the author, you have your blinders on because to you it makes sense for the character to do these things because they are you. But I don't know who you are. This character has been on the run her entire life, been trained to be cautious and alert for danger, to try and preserve her safety and her life. And here she wants to try and threaten the people she's been running from her whole life. Why is she acting like this? I understand you want to make her appear badass, but it doesn't fit with the character. She's not some bratty teenager who has never faced the realities of life, so doesn't understand the danger of the situation. She fully well understands it and knows what can happen to her if she steps out of line. Her dad was nearly killed by this group. Just please make your characters make sense. They get out of the car and she goes on again to monologue about how hot this man is. Like, I understand this is just a fiction book. This is someone's fantasy. You know, maybe I'm taking it all a bit too seriously. But I really don't think it's too much to ask for a good story when I'm reading a book. Is this book targeted at teens and young adults? Absolutely. But I think that's a little rude and ageist to think they deserve poorly written books because they are young. We're talking about kids that do algebra, learn about history, science, English, every day. I can barely handle division, but these kids are dealing with square roots and factors and who knows what else. I've blanked out most of my high school experience. Sorry, I just get a little bit upset at people being infantilized. Don't even get me started on how people act around the elderly. He was beautiful. I mean, I'd seen hot guys in movies, and even a few of them at the schools over the years, but Will was stunning. I hadn't had the chance to check him out properly since we'd met. He'd been drenched in rain and hidden in darkness a lot of the time, but now the sun was beaming down on his face, lighting up his spiky golden hair in a blaze of glory. His eyes, though they matched mine, seemed somehow completely different, like they saw everything. He wore plain jeans and a white shirt, and though they were stained with mud and blood, he pulled it off. He shrugged on a leather jacket, which seemed to be a trademark for these people. His olive tan put my pale complexion to shame, and with clearly defined muscle tone, it was easy to see how beautiful and dangerous Will was. Surprised no one has called the police on them yet, turning up to a gas station covered in blood. Also, I just noticed, rereading this script, I'm fairly certain when she first saw Will, she said he had very pale skin, but now he's got an olive tan. On the way to the toilet, she notices that Pike and Mia now both have golden eyes as well. They were wearing contacts earlier, and she thinks to herself, why did they all have the same coloured eyes? I mean, personally, I would have laughed so much if she started to think they may have been related, and then she had to question her hot and steamy reaction to Will, but she doesn't do that because that would make her look bad, and we can't have that. She questions whether or not she wants to escape because, she'd actually like to try and get some answers about what's going on, but she ends up deciding she'd try, because her dad could be dying alone on the street. So she tries to escape. She fails, of course. Her attempts don't even hurt him because he's just so strong and powerful, and she's just so tiny and weak. She does give Pike a good run for his money though, which was hilarious. But they get her, drug her, and they drive her off. Kyra wakes up in an unfamiliar room, her head spinning, and with the urgent need to vomit. She ends up looking in the mirror and finds herself clean, and the way she goes on about it, it's like she's never been clean before in her life. All the mud and blood were gone from my face, and I was cleaner than I'd ever been in my life. It wasn't just my face that was clean, it was all of me. Every inch had been scrubbed while I was out, and I'd been dressed in a pink nightgown trimmed with lace. I felt self-conscious and wrapped my skinny arms around my stomach as if I could cover my whole body with them. I noticed my ratty brown hair had been washed, brushed, and tied back in a series of braids. I'd never looked so beautiful in my life. My golden eyes stood out against my pale skin, my cheekbones more pronounced. I had never been a girly girl, and I preferred jeans to dresses anyway. I was the kind of girl who didn't shower after a training session because it didn't bother me to smell a little sweaty. Jesus, I nearly knocked myself out with an egregious eye roll. Is it cool to forgo hygiene when you have the luxury of access? It's just so stupid. Minorities get bullied and ostracized for their hygiene. Let's not make it a cool accessory for the not like other girls, okay? Of course, the first thing she has to do is go find some pants. If she stays in a dress for too long, the boys might not think she's interesting. And after changing, she finds Will just watching her. Like, bro, she's still a minor and you're a full-grown adult. If we're going to do this, let's call it for what it is and not make him a love interest. Oh, wait. Too late. She has a go at Will, and they all get touchy. It's all very juvenile. The character, the writing. She literally throws her hands in the air and groans. It just doesn't read as a young adult book, really. Will takes her to a room where we meet Isabel and Ivan Greenwood. Kyra confronts them, asking why they relentlessly followed and kidnapped Kyra. only for them to reveal that they are her real biological parents. Kyra does have a moment here where she asks if she is related to Will, which I did say would have been funny earlier, but she doesn't feel gross about thinking all those previous thoughts, just is relieved that he isn't her hot older brother. So now I just feel gross. Thanks. But no, they're not related. Actually, they aren't even human. They're something called Djinn. Now, I used to read the Bartimaeus sequence by Jonathan Stroud when I was a teenager. So I love Djinn. That's kind of the reason why I picked up this book. This book ruined it. Ruined it. The two go on to explain to Kyra what Djinn are because she's uneducated on the marvel that is Jonathan Stroud's book series. But not too much information, because if they revealed it all here, then Will wouldn't be able to be her tutor and teach her all about this society. He really doesn't do much tutoring though. No, actually, it appears that they might do a bit, but a lot of it is off page, so we miss out on all this world building, which, you know, is kind of important in a fantasy book. Ivan calls Will a guardian. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And then literally says to Kyra that Will tell her what that means later. But I won't do that to you. I'll tell you what it is now. Basically, they are Djinns who serve and protect other Djinn, and they tend to get treated as a lower class. The whole interaction goes by really quickly. Like, this was supposed to be the big reveal, and it just didn't feel like it was. Kyra barely reacts. The questions are cut short to prolong the story, and it just doesn't feel right. I'm not really sure I know how Kyra should have reacted, because like I said, Kyra doesn't really feel like a consistent character, but she does appear to not really have any self-preservation tendencies and tends to fly off the handle quite quickly. So it just seemed weird that she was very reserved and non-confrontational in the meeting of the people who ordered a hitman on her father and tormented her for years. I don't know, I guess I just expected more emotions, more answers, and for it to go on longer than just a couple of pages. She gets taken back to her room and gets ready for the night. She takes some aspirin and then rips all of the pillows off the bed and settles to sleep. Now, I just want to say I am not an author. I just read a lot and have too many questions and opinions. But these are times when you can characterize your character. Why did she take an aspirin and throw all of the pillows off? As a person who is constantly on the run and hiding away from people, wouldn't a nightly routine of checking the windows and doors are locked, checking in cupboards and under beds, untucking all of her blankets and piling the pillows in the corner of the room so she doesn't trip on them in case she needs to get up and attack, fit more than someone taking pills to help them sleep and tossing hazards all around her room? Try and put some thought behind every action your character does, please. Even in these moments, they may seem insignificant. They actually could be made significant, make every word count. Kyra awakes during the night. She's still struggling with a revelation that she is a Djinn. She opens her bedroom door, kind of with the intention to escape, to find Will sitting out there reading a book. He apologizes to her for everything and tells her that she is the only Djinn to have ever returned after being taken, indicating that Djinn being stolen is not an odd occurrence. Kyra doesn't pick up on that though. She's too busy being hot and heavy for this spiky, blonde-haired boy. She ends the conversation and decides to try and escape another way. So she turns on the shower to try and convince Will that she's in the room and goes to open the window, finding it locked. She finds some bobby pins and picks the lock, stating that her dad had taught me many things over the years, the first of which was picking locks. She unlocks it and scales the drain pipe and lands on the ground. Now, another bone to pick. The author tells us her father taught her many things, and picking locks was one of those. Don't we think it might have been a bit better instead of having those scenes of her running earlier in the book? Instead, we saw her picking locks to escape her house and climbing out of the window to kind of tie back to this moment. She literally sneaks out to run. Why doesn't she do any of this? Then you wouldn't need to tell us that she was taught how to pick locks. You could have shown us, which makes it all the more fun. She tries to steal a car, but oh no, she gets caught again. By who? You guessed it, Will. What do you think you're doing? He asked, a little harsher than usual. Where would you go? I'd go home. I'd find Dad and get far away from you people as possible. You don't trust me? Why would I trust you? You've given me no reason to, not one. I stopped Pike, he said. I would never have let him kill Malcolm, and I would never hurt you. You knocked my dad out, I reminded him. He's not your father. Will grabbed my shoulders and shook me a little. He stole you from your real parents and lied to you your entire life. You're a liar. Why would I believe it? I asked him. It makes no sense. None of it. I know it's a little crazy, but surely you've seen enough to convince you. Are we in the same story? What has she seen to convince her? There was no showing of birth certificates, no photos, no stories of her birth, literal bugger all. What do you mean she's surely seen enough to convince her? She has a little cry, and Will finally actually produces the first lot of evidence to convince her this is all true. He shows her a photograph. She had this photograph of her as a child in a woman's arms, but the face was cut off. However, this photo clearly showed the woman as Isabel. And this is all Kyra needs to convince her. One photo. She doesn't realise she's just found out magic exists. And I'm not sure what time period this is, but it appears modern. So wouldn't photo doctoring still be a thing? But no, it's fine. There are more pressing issues. She and Will have a moment as her whole life crashes around her, poetic. The scene is actually kind of nice. I think she has the appropriate amount of emotion here, and it's nice, Will is there to support her. He takes her back to her room and she asks him to stay. He discreetly tells her he can't and that she should not mention them being alone together due to their different social standings. It would be improper. So she wakes up by herself and thinks over the night's revelations. She goes and has breakfast with her biological parents. The author does a good job here writing some tension. It feels believable. Kyra is feeling out of place in this environment, whereas her parents appear quite comfortable and unaware of her discomfort. They're obviously used to a life of luxury, and Kyra is struggling to adjust to it all. Kyra asks some questions about their living arrangements and about their work. They inform Kyra they work on the council and make decisions on behalf of the community. Ivan shuts down too many questions again though, informing her that her questions will be answered by Will. I wish they actually were, but sure. I really don't like books that do this. When the moment feels right to answer a question, don't shut it down. I like to be curious with my stories. I want to get immersed and understand all the inner workings. But when you flat out tell me to stop asking questions because I'm not going to answer them, then it's frustrating. I understand it's trying to build up the character, show Ivan as a closed-off, unapproachable old man, but it's still frustrating, especially since I know a lot of my questions about the world aren't going to get answered. Isabel tells Kyra that they have an audience with the Queen at the end of the week and discloses that all Djinn communities are run by a monarchy. We also learn of Prince Nathaniel, the Queen's son, who Kyra will also be meeting with. Kyra asks why she was taken, but is again shut down. I don't mind this question being shut down because this is a big question. But smaller questions about the world are less significant, so why can't we just answer them? We finish breakfast and Kyra goes to meet with Will for her tutoring lessons. Now, I remember just earlier Will telling Kyra not to tell her parents that they were alone and that it was improper, so I had assumed someone would be accompanying them during their tutoring sessions, but no. It just said they are not supposed to be alone together, not intimate together, so why are they allowed to be alone together now but not last night? Shouldn't there be a Djinn going with them from the family to ensure nothing happens? I understand that Will is supposedly a trusted guardian, but the whole book forces down your throat that Ivan does not like and trust guardian, so how can Will really be a trusted guardian to Ivan? They go for a walk around the town and Will begins to tell her some information about the Djinn and their abilities. The Djinn were not created by anyone. We weren't made by a spell or toxic waste. Like humans, the Djinn evolved over time in remote places all over the world, two races living together. Of course the humans far outnumber us, but we are much stronger than them. Because of those abilities you all seem to have, I asked. Yes, the Djinn are blessed with abilities, different abilities, unique to individual Djinn. Like how Pike can create ice and Mia can create that weird screeching thing. Also correct. And I have tough skin, which means when I get hurt, I don't damage as easily as others. Like when you stabbed me. You'll develop your own ability soon enough. Will also touches on a bit about the myths about Djinn being tricksters. Our ancestors used to make a living by granting wishes, in a sense. People would ask for help, and in return for money, a Djinn would use their ability to help that person. Some Djinn cheated the humans, thinking they were better than them. It was those few that brought about the rumours and myths of Djinn being tricksters. We gave up sharing our abilities with humans a long time ago. During their conversation, Kyra starts to notice a lot of dogs and comments on it. Will becomes a bit closed off, and to Kyra appears that he is annoyed about the dogs and the way the Djinn treat them, but he just brushes her off. They walk until they reach a long metal fence, separating the big mansion-like houses from the smaller shacks, basically the property line separating the rich from the poor. "What's this?" I asked. "This is the Djinn compound," Will explained. "There are many compounds all over the world, each one ruled by a king." "A king, you say? I thought we established this one was ruled over by a queen." The compounds are usually located in remote areas, as we don't like being around humans very much anymore. Our compound is made up of 3 rings. There is the main fence. It protects the compound from dangers on the outside. After the main fence is the guardian houses, which are the ones you can see on the other side of that fence. That is the lower ring. This fence separates the lower ring and the middle ring. The middle ring is where the Djinn live, where you live. Do you see that large building up on the road, on top of the hill? He pointed off in the distance. I could just make out a white building with pillars surrounded by trees. Yeah. That's the upper ring, where you'll find the royal palace. Another fence separates the upper and middle rings. You separate people, giving some greater houses and other bad shacks. That's the way things are. The guardian are the lower class. We also get an explanation about how one becomes a guardian, which, I appreciate. Basically, Djinn have the ability to shapeshift into a type of animal, but they don't know what until they meet that certain type of animal. Since the Djinn see dogs as lowly animals, something that hurts me to my core, if that ends up being the animal you transform into, then you become a guardian and are usually shunned by your families and forced into servitude. I mean, if you're born to guardian though, are you still shunned, or is that just if you were born to a Djinn family? And dogs must be a fairly common form since there are so many of them. I'd like to know why they think so lowly of dogs. I don't remember seeing that explained, just that they do. But I'd also like to know what else people can transform into. Are all animals on the table, or just a certain few? Because these dog breeds haven't been around forever. Like, are there some cavoodle Djinn pups running around? The whole thing makes Kyra upset, but again, it would have been good to show that in her character before this revelation. I don't know, have her seem to care about social justice stuff while at school. She deals with a lot of internal misogyny and hates women a lot, so doesn't really come off as the type of person that cares about this stuff. Maybe she only cares about this stuff when it directly affects her. I shouldn't complain, I'm just glad she cares. It doesn't bother me how she got there. They cut their tutoring session short because she's bummed out and they return home. I mean, at least she's not the one being enslaved, but she got her feelings hurt, so now we have to comfort the fragile white girl. I'm being mean, but seriously, we see this a lot in reality. When confronted with the realities of racism, people end up having to comfort the oppressors. It's just messed up. Kyra returns home and enters to find her mother sitting alone in the sitting room. Her mother beckons her in, and Kyra notices that she appears sad. Kyra asks if she's okay, but her mother tells her all is fine and that she would like to give Kyra a tour around the house and discuss the family tree. Isabel discloses to Kyra that her parents, Kyra's grandparents, died before she was born, and is sad that Kyra never got to meet them, whereas Ivan's parents moved to another compound many years ago as diplomats, and they haven't seen them since. They have no other family left. Just them. Isabel shows her portraits of Ivan's family, and Kyra realizes there are none of hers. Isabel tells Kyra that her family hasn't done anything spectacular, therefore don't get remembered for that. Instead, she keeps their portraits in a locket she hangs around her neck, and it's actually really sweet. This scene is good. It's a great showcase of her mother's character, and shows Kyra starting to warm up to her. I wish maybe they did something together, like maybe Isabel gives something to Kyra, just to tie Kyra into the whole family scene. But it's still nice. I don't have too many complaints. I was just recently reading a book called Counterpart. It's the last video I put up. And I noticed a lot in the first story, and especially in its second installment, the word as was used a horrendous amount of times. I ended up highlighting them and would average about 2 to 3 a page. I started noticing the incessant use of as when I started beta reading. Is this what people mean when they say a person is writing passively? Like, why do these authors use as so much? This book has it as well. This is why I'm bringing this topic up, as they have as used twice in one sentence. As I shifted my chair closer to the table, I noticed Isabel beaming at me as she placed a baked potato on her plate. Do people read these sentences and see nothing wrong with that? Am I just crazy? This writing seriously takes me out of the story because I get so fixated on it. I swear there was one sentence in the second book of Counterpart that had 3 as's in there. I know it's a nitpicking thing. I'm seeing it so much and I just can't help but get annoyed at it. A week goes past and we just get told that Kyra learns about the Djinn Society. Instead, we get to play dress up. Yay! Sorry, that was rude. Well, not really, because Ira is really just a jeans and t-shirt kind of girl. Don't worry, she won't let you forget it. She's trying on dresses to pick one to wear for her meeting with the Queen today. Will tells her she looks beautiful, and they have an awkward exchange. Ivan, Isabel, and Ira all leave and make their way to the castle, where they meet the Queen. Greetings, Ivan and Isabel Greenwood. The voice belonged to a very tall and very skinny woman walking down the staircase in front of us. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, dotted with what I think were diamonds. She wore a silver silk dress, which only made her look more slimline with her lanky body. Her eyes were huge, gold shimmer above them painted on like a mask. She was almost alien-like, except her face gave a warm smile that calmed her angular features. How many times can you call someone skinny? Kyra embarrasses herself in front of the Queen because she's able to read her thoughts, but the Queen is gracious and gives her grace. Her son Nathaniel comes out to greet them as well, a boy of around Kyra's age with short brown hair, a chiselled but warm face. Stunning in Kyra's opinion, but obviously not as striking as Will. Nathaniel takes Kyra on a tour of the palace, and he notes that she doesn't appear to be enjoying herself. He tells her he tries to put on a snooty prince persona to make people see him as mature, but really he's cool and laid back. Right, because trying to appear snooty really comes across as mature. They talk a bit. The book tells you that it's a really deep conversation, but I mean, I'll let you make that decision if you read it. I didn't think it was. We learn a bit about the Djinn's abilities, so it appears that Djinn usually come into their powers at around 16 years of age, and abilities have varying degrees of strength. Kyra, being 17, hasn't shown any signs of abilities, so is concerned that hers may be rather weak. She finds out that she'll need a trainer to help her develop her skills, and surprise, surprise, Nathaniel will be her trainer, and she will come routinely to the palace to practice. They go to check it out, the training area, and surprisingly, Mia, Pike, and Will are also practicing there. Is this the only training centre they have in the whole compound? The book says the Guardian train there as well because the Queen likes to keep them close, but that feels like a lot of people in one space. Like, it just feels like an easy way to keep Kyra and Will together, but not really put much thought about how and why they are training there. The book has just spent all this time telling you that the Guardian are a lower class, but now are allowed to train alongside the elite, and no one really has much of a problem about it. I understand the Queen and Nathaniel are written as not holding these beliefs, but they maintain them to keep the peace, so how is this allowed? If you're going to include some really real political issues in your book, you really can't just wash over them and not give them the justice they deserve. These are realities people live with every day. I don't know, this book just doesn't really handle this narrative well. I really don't like the underlying theme of people in power having slaves that are literally dogs, and then we just focus too much on romance and dress-ups. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well. I'm all for you having your juicy spice time. Just don't bring up people's real life issues just to try and make your character look good. It's very performative. Maybe it gets discussed better in the other books, but I'm not reading them. I just really don't like this book. They finish the tour and Nathaniel leads Kyra back to their parents. They find them in the war room in the middle of a meeting, so they sneak in and listen. They hear the last part of a conversation about some agreement before the subject is changed to discuss the growing threat of something called the Blooders. I agree that the Blooders are becoming more of a problem than we would like, but at the moment we are safe from them here. Sending our Guardian out would only leave us unprotected and put them in unnecessary danger. We cannot ask them to die for us. No, you would have us die with them, Ivan said. You would have us fight like dogs. Silence, Celeste's voice thundered, not just verbally, but in my mind as well. I will not have you disrespect me or the Guardian, Ivan Greenwood. Know your place. Okay, but exactly. You seem to respect the Guardian. You should know your place. You are the queen. Why are you allowing them to continue living in squalor? I understand it takes time to get people to change their minds, but you are the queen. At least put some policies in place to help them. How can she get away with allowing them to train with other Djinn's kids, but not give them better living quarters? I just don't get it. And Ivan really seems to hate the Guardian, so why is he allowing one to tutor and influence his daughter? Well, because then this story wouldn't happen. They leave the palace, and Ivan starts complaining in the car about the Queen defending the Guardian. So Kyra goes for a walk against his wishes and ends up running into Pike, Mia and Will. They just seem conveniently everywhere she is. They invite her to join them at the park for a run. Pike suddenly likes her now because she's cool and slumming it with them. Pike ends up shifting into a Doberman, then back into a human, and we are blessed with this scene. Suddenly, the Doberman shifted, growing bigger and bigger until it turned back into Pike. A naked Pike. "Pike, put some clothes on or shift back," Will said, averting his eyes. "You can't just walk around naked in front of people," I said to Pike, though I was looking at Will. "Really?" he replied. "It's kind of normal here." "It's normal to be naked?" "Actually, kind of," Will said, and I looked at him with disbelief. "But we tend to not wave it in other people's faces." That comment was for Pike, who I made the mistake of looking at to see him shrug. All of him. Honestly, I have no idea what I'm supposed to imagine here. Does the whole junk swing around when you shift your shoulders? What does that even mean? It's just my shoulders moving. I obviously don't have one of those things, so I can't try it out to see what happens, and I'm out of the loop. I assume we're supposed to assume that it moves, so do with that mental image what you wish. I will burn it. Mia and Pike leave for a run, and Kyra and Will are left to talk. Kyra realizes here that Will was the golden Labrador she met earlier on in the book. She then goes on to ask him about what blooders are. Will is hesitant to tell her, but does because he doesn't want to lie to Kyra. He reveals that the way Djinn granted wishes was to give the humans their blood. When humans drink Djinn blood, they gain their abilities for a short period of time. So technically they might not have been granting wishes, but really giving the humans the means to do it themselves. Eventually the humans thought it unfair that the Djinn controlled all this power and decided to take the blood by force. So the Djinn went into hiding in these compounds, but small groups of humans would band together to kidnap Djinn and drain them of their blood. Multiple exposures to Djinn blood kind of evolved these humans into blooders, humans with red eyes, and were able to harness the abilities granted to them through the blood for longer. Kyra remembers the red vial her father drank from that night. She was taken by Will and realizes that he too was a bloodder. He had taken Kyra in the hopes of having his own private blood supply to provide him with abilities. He'd supposedly taken her at a young age to mould her into a perfect blood mule, freely willing to give him blood when he asked. I'm going to be honest, he did a pretty bad job if that was the idea. She was pretty defiant and really didn't ever follow his instruction. I assume this reasoning is debunked in later books because this reasoning makes no sense. And I don't really understand why Kyra believed it. In order to get abilities from Djinn blood, a Djinn must have awakened their abilities first, so he was unable to feed off her this whole time. Why would he go to all that trouble to raise her for 16 years when he could have easily just gotten an adult? I don't want to read the other book, so I won't ever find out, but I don't understand why Kyra might not question it more. Was he still drinking blood during their time together? Like, what was his overall goal? Because we never see him going through withdrawal. Do blooders go through withdrawal symptoms? How did he control his lust for blood? Wanting his own private supply but having to wait 16 years for it is a huge commitment. I don't understand why she isn't like, wow, why did he do that? That seems like the least ineffective way to go about it. And also, she didn't seem to be showing any signs of having any powers. Like, she was supposed to grow into her powers at age 15 or 16 years old. And she was already 17, nearly 18. Like, was he willing to risk her not ever growing into her powers? Like, does he even know how Djinn grow into powers? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. She goes on to ask why she's the only one to have been returned, and he tells her that blooders usually run in packs, whereas her father was alone. It would be too dangerous to attack a group of blooders since they might end up with more casualties. I would like to know how they kept track of Kyra though, how they were able to find her all those times but failed miserably to get her. Like, it was only one blooder who appeared not to be taking blood regularly. How did they evade the Djinn so easily for so long, especially since they have these powers and can turn into animals? Like, Will was literally running with Kyra when she was alone. Why didn't he take the chance to get her then? Then they wouldn't have had to do that epic fight and risk their lives, since it appears that that's the reason they don't go after the other ones that were kidnapped. Because, they're concerned about losing lives. Even though it appears that the mentality is that Guardian are subhuman, or sub-Djinn, and their lives don't matter, why are they worried about their lives over the Djinn that were kidnapped? Are the ones usually getting kidnapped just Guardian as well? And that's why? Why were more resources not thrown at trying to get Kyra back when they seemed to be able to track her really well? They didn't move a lot to stay off the radar. They moved when they were discovered. I don't get it. Sorry, Kyra. It sounds like you didn't really mean that much to these people as we first thought. Will drops Kyra home and she ruminates on her situation. She does have a little thought about maybe he changed his mind and wanted to raise her as a daughter, but that she'll never know the truth. I mean, you could try and find out, or even think on it a bit longer, because it doesn't make sense. But no, we'll never know. Or you might if you read the other books. Days go past and she continues with her lessons and does some insufferable shopping with Isabel. Finally, the day to commence training comes and she's excited to awaken her power. She jogs to the castle, which now Ivan somehow allows, because before they were far too good to walk anywhere. And she meets Nathaniel and he leads her to the training room, hand in hand. Kyra's a little embarrassed, of course. We meet Seth and Millie, who are in the middle of training their abilities, with Millie currently floating 10 feet in the air. Their arrival distracts Millie and she plummets to the ground, but is saved when a large gym mat flies across the floor and stops beneath her, cushioning her fall. Seth's ability is revealed to be telekinesis, and he was the one to move the mat. I understand this scene is to reveal their abilities, a great way of showing, but also why would they be doing a training session without the mat already under Millie? Were they seriously willing to risk her dying just to see if he could get the mat underneath her in time? Especially in a time where Djinn are seemingly being kidnapped. Actually, how common are these kidnappings and how are they happening? Are the Djinn being kidnapped from inside the compound, or are there Djinn going on outings for supplies and getting caught? When was the last kidnapping at this compound? Is this like a really big threat or not? Because the Queen said that they appeared pretty safe within the compound in her speech earlier. And I still have no idea if the blooders go through withdrawals. But, can lack of blood kill them? You know how people going through drug and alcohol withdrawals can die? Do they have to take something else to help with these cravings? I want to know what the stakes are. I do appreciate that Kyra and Millie appear to get along, but it's kind of, instead of instant girl hate, it's instant girl love. You know, I just want reason behind why people like people and why people dislike people, not just instantly liking or disliking them. They start going through some testing to see if they can awaken her power, but are unsuccessful. Kyra understandably is frustrated, and they decide to call it for the day, planning to come back again tomorrow. Kyra arrives home and is greeted by Isabel and Ivan, stating they have a surprise for her. Kyra is handed a puppy by them, and they audibly relax when she holds it, causing Kyra to realise they were testing to see if she was a guardian. "You brought me a puppy to see if I'd turn into one when I touched it," I shouted, and from Isabel's awkward glance I knew I was right. "I patted Will when he was a dog. He must have told you that." Guardian dogs won't activate your transformation. I couldn't take the chance. I had to be sure before this went any further. I couldn't have a guardian for a daughter. Obviously this goes down well with Kyra, and she ends up taking herself and her puppy to a room. She cools off with a shower, and Will arrives, asking if she'd like a lesson. Why he's allowed to be alone with her, in her room, at 9 p.m? Who knows? It all feels so inconsistent. Kyra notices he's a little nervous, but doesn't raise it with him. She refuses a lesson, being that it's 9 p.m, and tells him she won't be available tomorrow either, since she'll be training. She opens up about her concerns that she's falling behind everybody else, and he empathizes with her, telling her he also took a long time to find out his ability since it's so obscure. I don't really understand his ability. The book says that his skin is tougher than normal skin, so I assumed it was harder, so knives would bounce off it. But no, he still gets stabbed, just doesn't get wounded. So is it really his skin being tough and not just that he instantly heals? Like, I don't know. They nearly kiss, which again, how is he allowed to be alone with her? But doesn't, and he leaves, so we don't really find out why he's nervous. Was it just because it was late? But why did he come anyway, and why was he allowed? 9 p.m. is far too late for a lesson. Why did Ivan allow this? My head hurts. This would make more sense if they were sneaking around, doing things they shouldn't be doing. Instead we get told that Will is subhuman, and Ivan doesn't trust his kind, but he trusts Will, not sure why, and allows him to enter his only daughter's room at night on the premise that he's going to teach her a lesson? What? Kyra's upset from being rejected by Will, asking herself why doesn't he like her in that way, and has a very fitful sleep. She gives up trying at about 5 in the morning and takes her puppy out for a run. So the first part of this book, she was supposed to be scared of men in black suits coming to get her, but she still went out by herself. Now she's supposed to be scared of blooders, because she's heard they kidnap Djinn and suck them dry, and that she might not even be safe in the compound. But she's still okay with going out by herself. I was just reading a book with the same issue. I may do a video on it and talk more about it. But literally, she goes out and nearly gets kidnapped, even though it's written in the book that she has very bad mental health and PTSD. This doesn't seemingly affect her all that much. And then she goes out on a run again, resulting in her friends getting kidnapped and someone dying. Her friends end up escaping and they reunite, and you'll never guess, but this woman goes on a run again, and lo and behold, she returns to find her friends kidnapped again and another one dead. Like, Jesus wept, what the hell? I know it sounds like I hate reading these books, but I do honestly love it. The two walk the streets, and Kyra comes to the conclusion that if she figures out her ability, then maybe she'll solve all of her issues, since really she just wants to fit in and be included. The puppy, she ends up calling it Kaisuke, hears a noise and runs off through the fence, separating the guardian houses from the Djinn houses, and she chases after him. Kaisuke leads her to a cemetery, and she finds the gravestones of her grandparents on Ivan's side. They are in disrepair, and Kyra realizes that he must never come and visit them, making her feel sad. I just have to point out here that Kyra was told by Isabel earlier in the book that Ivan's grandparents had moved to another compound. So did they actually die and Ivan lied to Isabel? But then why doesn't Kyra say, wow, Isabel thought they'd moved, but really they'd died and Ivan lied to her? Did we just forget that we'd already said the grandparents were alive? Because, I've done this before when I don't fully plan out backstories when I'm doing my hobby writing. And, just kind of have at it at the first draft. So I feel this, I understand this. But come on, this should have been addressed before publishing. Am I missing something? A figure calls out to her from the mist, and it's revealed to be Pike. He comes over to check on her with Kaisuke in his arms. They ask each other why the other is here. And Pike tells Kyra that there's someone he'd like her to meet. Pike stepped in front of a large tombstone. Kyra, he said with a sad smile, this is my dad. My dad always believed in fighting for Djinn, protecting them from anything that threatened them. He died fighting. He died a hero. Pike tells Kyra why he's proud to be Guardian, that there used to be warriors that protected the Djinn, but became slaves when the Djinn went into hiding, and instead had walls to protect them. So I just wish this was explained better, but they must obviously still have military, since there was a line in the book where Kyra said she still wasn't safe here because of the Blooders, so they must still be able to get in. So to know that they're here, the military must be watching on the outside, but you don't see or hear anything about that. So are some Guardians still military and others become slaves? And there's also the palace guards, And how was Kyra kidnapped? Was she one of the ones kidnapped from inside the walls? Because that would add to the need of continuing to have a military. And do they have scouting parties that go out and check the land around them for traps? How are they continuing to protect this place? Did they just put up a wall and call it a day? How does this work in the rest of the world? Is it magically hidden? Or is this treated as a country? Do they have to pay land taxes? How do they cooperate with other humans? We still seem to be on Earth, so how can they just exist out here? I feel like some authors just need a toddler to sit on their shoulder during their writing process, just constantly asking all these annoying questions. Kyra says now she realizes why he was so mad at her fake father, and Pike ominously says yes, that's why, and leaves quickly, kind of indicating that he's hiding something more. I think the author did a good job here creating the atmosphere. I knew instantly there was more to the story without the author needing to explicitly give it away. I applaud them for this. They did a good job. The next chapter starts with the gang in training again, still trying to figure out Kyra's ability, and once again failing miserably. Kyra is being insufferable. The book literally agrees with me, okay? You'll get this. Everyone finds their ability. But I want it now, I moaned, like a 2-year-old in a toy store. This is not endearing. I'm literally getting flashbacks. Kyra takes a break and we get a montage of the others demonstrating their abilities. When they're done, Millie invites Kyra over to have a girls' day. Poor Kyra nearly has a fit because God forbid somebody actually sees her as one of the girls. Millie reveals that she doesn't have many friends since herself, Nathaniel, and Seth are the only Djinn their age who are training. Everyone else either hasn't gotten their abilities yet, has already mastered them, or ended up being Guardian. So just because you master your ability, you don't have to train? Kyra literally said it appeared that her father didn't have great control over his ability, and presumably he's about 20 years older than her. So how are they the only Djinn training? How big is this place? I assumed it was quite large, but when you don't do adequate world building, you leave a lot up to misinterpretation. But also I thought the Queen allowed Guardian to train here, So why weren't they here today or yesterday? Were they not allowed so Kyra could train? If so, shouldn't she feel bad since she normally feels bad about their mistreatment? It's all just very convenient. Kyra asks why more Djinn are becoming Guardian every year, but they're not sure. It doesn't get answered in this book, so I don't know either. But they do reveal that the Guardian test is done much earlier than it used to be, and usually done by parents in their homes. So are we talking about babies? People are abandoning babies? There's some pretty dark themes here that are kind of just getting brushed over, y'all. But don't worry, the Queen and Nathaniel are working on getting them equal rights, but nobody else wants it. Also, how does people become royals? Is there a royal bloodline? Or can you get usurped? Why hasn't someone tried to assassinate her? I feel like she and Nathaniel should be concerned about that. Kyra ends up agreeing to the girls' day. Yay! And they leave together to head to Millie's house. We meet Hannah, Millie's mum, who is a ray of sunshine, and we see a contrast in Millie's home life compared to Kyra's. They head to Millie's room, and of course Kyra has no idea what girls do on a girls' day because she's just not like other girls. Millie tells her she's welcome to discuss her feelings for Will, but Kyra tries to deflect. Millie says she doesn't believe in the old rules and isn't trying to get Kyra to reveal something so she can get her in trouble later for it, so Kyra decides to open up. Tell me about Will. I've had feelings for Will since the day we met. I thought he had feelings for me too, but when I tried to kiss him last night, he ran away like I was death. I gushed, breathing hard. You tried to kiss him? Millie squealed. Yeah, but he rejected me, if you recall, I grumbled. She waved it off. Oh, please. He wants you. Is that some twisted girl logic? I'm pretty sure running away is a negative sign. She shook her head, as if I was silly for not understanding. Trust me, he wants you. It doesn't matter anyway, I said. He's Guardian and I'm not. It's not like we could ever be together. Not with an attitude like that. Haven't you been listening to anything I've been saying? Love is love, Kyra. If you love Will, then tell him. Be with him. Millie convinces Kyra that she should tell Will she loves him, so she leaves the girls' day to do so. I know it's supposed to be sweet, but I was so ready for some girl friendship scenes. Anyway, she gets home and asks Isabel to invite Will over for a quick lesson and goes to get ready for his arrival. Kyra is feeling it. Her heart is fluttering, her palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Sorry, overused joke. She gets dressed and thinks maybe she should get all fancy, but settles on jeans again. 18 times. 18 is how often the word jeans show up in this book. It's like, okay, we get it. We get it. She's different. Will arrives and Kyra works up the courage to speak. Will, I need to. Listen, Kyra, the other night, he said, cutting me off. Maybe he wanted to tell me something too. My heart leapt in my chest. I wanted to talk about it too, I said, wringing my hands together just to keep busy. It was a mistake, Will said, which took me aback. I shouldn't have led you on, but whatever you feel for me, I don't feel the same way. I think it's best if I stop being your tutor. I stood, mouth open, shell-shocked. You don't feel... No, I don't, he said bluntly. He turned to leave. My eyes stung with tears. After all that, after all the workup, he didn't feel anything for me. Something snapped, and in a moment of desperation or anger, or maybe both, I grabbed his wrist. No, I said, holding his gaze. You don't get to say that. You don't feel anything for me, and you don't get to blame it on being a Guardian. You can't lie to me. You promised you never would. I know you will. I've seen the way you look at me. It's not just in my head. I know you feel something for me, and I won't let you hide behind Ivan or the Guardian. Any of it. I stamped my foot on the ground and held his gaze intently. Kyra, no! I grabbed his face and kissed him hard. I crushed my lips against his in a salty, wet kiss. Will tried to push away, but I held on until finally he gave in and wrapped his hands around my waist. Okay, so they go a little further and get a bit touchy, which is not great, seeing that she is still a minor, so I will not be reading that. How can adults look at children and see anything sexual about them? Yeah, it's not okay, and I think people need to be called out for it more. It's not okay. This should not be here, and it should not be normalized. A kiss, fine, but it should have ended there. Adults need to stop writing about children having sex in these ways, especially with someone who is an adult. They end up getting caught, thank God, by Ivan, who rightfully kicks him out, though he does also assault his daughter in the process, so he can go frick himself as well. Ivan goes on about how his image would be ruined if people found out about this, and forbade Kyra from ever seeing him again. Honestly, how were they ever allowed to be alone together still blows my mind. The fact that they didn't have to sneak around, but he was freely allowed to be in her room. Yeah, I don't know. I do know they needed this scene, but it still could have happened and still makes sense, in the world that you decided to create. It just doesn't make sense in this scenario. Isabel consoles Kyra to sleep, and she wakes up later and goes to have a shower. I think I counted 7 times, plus the time she pretended to have a shower. So 8 times Kyra has had a shower in this book. 8. It's too much. I'm crying. She gets interrupted by Mia. Somehow she's the new tutor. How? Why? I don't know. Why is Ivan trusting another guardian? Does he know about gay people? Even if they don't get romantic, can he still trust another one not to corrupt her with other dangerous thoughts? And why Mia? We have never seen any relationship between them. Why doesn't he choose Millie, a Djinn, and whose parents are on the council? Of course Mia hates Kyra because Will chose her, because a woman can't ever exist outside of men. They aren't their own complex beings with emotions and dreams that aren't summed up to hormones. She gives it to Kyra. Good on her. See, I'm rooting for the wrong woman, aren't I? You drove me to this. And she tells Kyra she'll never see Will again. Kyra doesn't want to believe it, but she knows it's true, so collapses and cries. She doesn't want to go to training, but decides to go anyway, sneaking out of the house and heading to the castle. She sees Millie and Seth already there, and Millie falsely assumes everything went well last night. Kyra tries to act normal, but erupts into tears and confides in Millie. She and Seth try to comfort her, reminding her that now she knows he likes her and that Nathaniel and the Queen are trying to change the culture, so maybe they could be together in the future. Nathaniel arrives, concerned about Kyra, but she reassures him she's okay now. He tells them he's actually got something for them and hands them invitations for a royal ball held in a week's time, which has a mysterious message about a special announcement that will be revealed. The gang press Nathaniel about the surprise, but he shuts down and won't reveal it. They decide to go home early, and Nathaniel and Seth walk with Kyra to the front, where they run into Will. Nathaniel directs him to the hall where the Queen is waiting for him, and he breezes past, basically ignoring Kyra. Kyra asks Nathaniel why he's here, and he tells her that he's here to apply for the palace guard position. She decides to follow him down the corridor and confront him. "What are you doing?" he said. "I told you there's nothing going on between us, and I don't want to see you again, so go away." His voice and eyes were pushing me. They were so full of anger that it hurt to look at him. "Will," I begged, near tears again. "Leave, Kyra," he yelled. I flinched and clenched my fists. "No," I shouted. "You don't get to say those awful things to me. I know you don't mean them." I was poking him in the chest with my finger. "I know you feel something for me." Will rubbed his brow. "Kyra, I don't have feelings for you. This is what I do, okay? I used you because I thought you would sleep with me, and that's it. Anger exploded from my mind like a shock wave. Only it literally was a shock wave. Will went flying down the corridor like someone with super strength had punched him in the stomach. He slammed into a painting on the back fall, falling to the ground in a heap. What? So Kyra accidentally discovered she has telekinesis. Amazing! She'd managed to uncover her ability due to that big emotion she felt. Supposedly, heightened emotion really brings out one's ability. Why they weren't doing that when they were testing for her ability, I don't know. I do know, because then we couldn't have this scene. The Queen comes running after hearing the commotion, and once Will is cared for, she ushers Kyra to a small meeting room. Kyra is embarrassed because the Queen had heard the fight, but the Queen discloses that she also once had a romantic attraction with a Djinn when she was younger, which resulted in her being thrown out of her home and forced to come to this compound to marry the king. The Queen tells Kyra to focus on mastering her ability instead of love, especially since it isn't accepted yet, and Kyra agrees. She leaves the palace and thinks over the interaction she had with Will, not sure what to believe anymore. Does he love her, or was he really just using her? She arrives home. Isabel tries to engage in conversation, but Kyra brushes her off, and Isabel tells her she's there for her if she needs anything. She's so sweet. I really wish we kind of had developed this relationship better between Kyra and her biological parents. I wish her father was more complicated, but he's just very one note. Isabel's a bit more interesting, but really all of these characters don't really have much motivations that deepen their character. I don't know why Ivan is awful. I don't know why Will likes Kyra. I don't know what Kyra's doing. What is actually the plot? What story is being told here? Kyra gets kidnapped by Will, but then we find out she was actually getting rescued. And now what? It's just Kyra learning about her ability, some scenes with her and Will. What's our end goal here? I feel like I'm watching a pot of water waiting for it to boil, and it's just not happening. She goes and has another bloody shower and talks to herself in the mirror, telling herself to focus on her training and her friends and forget about Will. Yeah, good luck with that, babe. She wakes up the next morning and has breakfast with Isabel and Ivan. This is just a personal gripe, but I hate that they both have names that start with I. I'm sorry. I feel like everything about this book is pissing me off. I was just so excited for it, so I think that's contributing to my frustration. She goes on to tell them that she has discovered her ability. Ivan is happy that his daughter has such a strong ability, obviously because he can brag about it and it's good for his image. And she ends up spending the weekend with Millie, getting ready for the ball. She goes back to training on the Monday, and it's just her and Seth, since Millie and Nathaniel are busy organising the ball. I don't know why a teenager and the prince are organising the ball, why they don't have event organisers to do that. But, yes, okay, we'll go with it. Kyra notes that Seth is usually very quiet, because now that they're alone they can have a chat, and he says he does it on purpose because he hears people's secrets. He asks Kyra if there is anything she'd like to know, and she asks him about Pike's father. Do you know that Pike's father was Djinn? He was one of the best Djinn we ever had. Pike's father was the first to be sent after you when you were first kidnapped. He chased down Malcolm and ran him off the road. They fought, but Malcolm killed him with a piece of metal to the head. I was stunned, silent. Suddenly Pike's anger towards Malcolm when they took me made sense. He wanted revenge for his father's death. Now this was actually really cool. I genuinely didn't see that coming and I liked it. I like that we tied one of the characters back to the kidnapping. I'm not sure why it was Pike though, since he isn't really like a major character. And this revelation doesn't really affect the story much anyway. But also, why was it revealed here? It was just an offhand conversation with a very minor character. Why did he get to be the one to reveal this information? It was kind of played like, oh my gosh, what interesting information. But it doesn't carry the plot forward in any way. It's just like a tidbit on a side character to give them some backstory. You know, I wish it had more meaning to it. They go on to do some more training, and when they're about to wrap it up, Will, Mia and Pike walk in. Just the mere sight of Will sends Kyra into a rage, and she sends tennis balls flying at them. I thought she'd be more upset at this, since she nearly hit Pike as well, and, you know, we just found out that his dad died trying to save her, but she's not upset about this, and we don't even have a moment where she addresses this with him, not even her feeling awkward around him or anything. The two scenes just feel disconnected. How can we go from learning such a heartbreaking thing about Pike to then have him enter the scene and Kyra not even have any emotions about seeing him? I just feel like, what was the point of telling us that right then if you don't do anything with it the next time we see Pike? Kyra arrives home and she feels unwell. Isabel sees her and is concerned. Kyra tries to tell her she's fine but collapses. This is stupid, okay? But to start, Isabel is like really concerned about Kyra, and Kyra tells her it's nothing. Isabel tells her, you know, it's not nothing, and leads her to the kitchen, when suddenly Kyra is now saying she's dying, and Isabel tells her to stop being dramatic and she's fine. Like, how did we flip-flop so quickly? This is stupid little... Isabel tells Kyra she's feeling this way because she's not used to using her ability, though she didn't feel this way the first time she used it. And it wasn't like she used it more today than earlier, since she was unsuccessful when activating it until Will entered the arena. So it's not like you can use that excuse. Isabel asks the cook, whose name is Kellen, to help Kyra back to her room, and Kyra asks him how he became a cook when he is also a guardian. He says he refused to fight even though he was expected to. He has quite an important ability that would assist in fighting. What they're fighting, I don't know. I don't know how big a threat these blooders are. They don't really sound like they are that big of a threat usually, so... Oh. Okay. So he was shunned by the guardian. So that was surprising to hear. It doesn't really get developed further in this book, you know, don't you worry. And he ended up being hired by Isabel as a cook. So, a bit of interesting information about a side character that does nothing. Maybe they get developed more in the other books. Anyway. Kyra sleeps off the illness from using her abilities and takes her dog out for a piss. They end up going to the dog park and run into Pike, who, of course, is naked. For a place that has a lot of naked people walking around, since it's so normal, he's the only one that seems to be naked. We now get that scene of Kyra talking to him about his dad dying, trying to rescue her, and again, she's the one crying, and he has to comfort her. Like, seriously, this main character really is... Can she just face some consequences or something instead of having people tell her she's perfect and not the problem? People either love her and make her look good, or hate her just to make her look good. But she's awful. I know that the death of Pike's dad isn't her fault, but why is she the one being consoled for it? Like, babe, can you just actually be there for someone else? It's not all about you. And of course now Pike is in love with her, because why not? But it's cool, you know, he respects that she's Will's and won't push it. So it's good, because I did think the scene was going to try and push boundaries. But, you know, Pike respected it in this scene. He did the bare minimum and he didn't assault someone, you know. He's your gold star, boy. Kyra leaves her home. It's now the next day and she decides to go and see Pike again at the dog park. He and Mia are there and Kyra and Mia get into a fight again over Will. It just feels unnecessary and like girl hate. It's written like Mia shouldn't hate Kyra, that it's unwarranted, but it's not like she's ever been nice to Mia either. Her kidnapping resulted in her uncle getting killed. It turns out she and Pike are cousins. And she's realising the guy she's grown up with and is in love with wants another girl. Like, can we give Mia some grace here? I'm not saying her actions are okay, but she isn't some cartoonish villain. You're telling me if you weren't in her shoes, you would find it hard not to dislike Kyra? I mean, I dislike Kyra. I don't even have to be in her shoes to dislike Kyra. Pike stands up for Kyra and Mia leaves. Pike gets really cringe and creepy, saying she looks good and that he'll happily wait for her. Yuck. Again, why do we need to have this here, especially if we're not going to call it out? Will shows up. Kyra is worried he misunderstands the situation between her and Pike, so he gets a little flustered, but Will just leaves. Mia comes storming back to tell Kyra they have a tutoring session in an hour and they all leave. The scene added nothing to the story, instead just to make us uncomfortable with Pike continuing to now push boundaries he said he would keep. I'm taking that gold star back, you bastard. Kyra heads to the palace library for a tutoring session. Mia tries to give Kyra a book to read and bounce, but Kyra reminds her that she can't read the script Djinn uses and points out that they speak English, which is a good point. Why do they write everything in another script but speak English? Why don't they speak their own language? It's not answered, don't you worry. They get into another fight. Kyra tells Mia she's just jealous that all the men love her instead of Mia. Like, seriously, am I supposed to like this girl? Pike's just being a lovesick puppy, in love with the daughter of his father's murderer. He's not my father. He killed my uncle, Mia shouted. Pike acts like none of it happened. You've got him all mesmerised, just like Will. I was shocked Mia thought that about me. Will wasn't the one who'd been mesmerised. It was me. I didn't do anything. Pike and I are just friends. You shouldn't be anything, she shrieked. What do you care anyway? He's your cousin. He is, and I care about him. I want to stop him from making a stupid decision. You're just jealous that all the men in your life are giving me attention and not you. Seriously? And hinting at incest? Kyra is awful. Deservedly, she gets slapped, and the two get into a brawl. They end up getting kicked out of the library, and Kyra slinks away to Millie's house, where she gets healed by Millie's mother. Kyra tells Millie everything that happened. I went on to tell Millie all about the last few days, about Pike's declaration, Will's harshness, and Mia's jealousy. Wow, Millie said when I was done. You have a complicated life. No kidding, I replied. Millie wrapped an arm around my shoulders and pulled me in close. I'm sorry things are hard for you, she said. In love with someone who doesn't want you, loved by someone who sees you as a friend, and hated by a girl who wears way too much eyeliner. Oh shoot. Sorry, I just have to go and pick up my eyeballs. I rolled them too freaking hard. I don't know if they get to spend some more time picking apart this relationship with Kyra and Mia in the later books, but I just don't like how it's portrayed here. I don't like any of these relationships. Mia's hate is kind of painted as unjustified, and Kyra is just the poor victim. Pike loves her. Why? And also, why does Will love her? Why is Ivan so hateful? Kind of understand why Isabel likes Kyra, one being that she is her daughter. But I also don't really understand the relationship. Like, you've just gotten your daughter back from being stolen from you for 16 years, and you just so easily go back into regular programming. Did you not actually care that much for her? Is this how you acted while she was missing? Why aren't you, really protective over her, not letting her out of your sight? Why does she stay a little distant? I'd like to get into her head a bit and see how she's reacting to having her daughter back. Did she just kind of get used to having no children? Is she finding it hard to bond with her daughter? Is she just trying to keep up appearances? I don't know. I feel like there's quite a few scenes with Kyra and Isabel, but I personally don't think they give us much on their relationship. You know, so many of these scenes just seem wasted. When these relationships could have been developed so much more, you know, with time and effort put into them. If it was just more refined and the scenes tried to do more than one thing at a time, this could have been so much better. But you know, with time and love, everything could be better. But if we stuck to that, you know, nothing would ever be finished. The week goes on, Kyra gets in some more training sessions since she's trying to control her power. It would be disastrous if she lost it at the ball when, you know, she sees Will there. They spend most of Friday getting ready for the ball, though Kyra can't possibly understand why you'd need a whole day to get ready because she's so quirky and cool and would rather just show up in jeans and a t-shirt. You know, why is it cool not to care? Oh, right. Because we want women to think it's okay for men not to put in effort. You need to train them, demean them. If they knew how much men could care about things that mattered to them, then the women would expect more from them, and we can't be having that. That's too hard. And it's so hard to keep up this facade of effort, so let's have women do it for us. Women putting down other women, making the enemy work for us. Business is booming. But seriously, women, you are worth it. Your time and effort is appreciated, and I love you. I don't want to talk about the makeover scene, just know it's insufferable, and of course Kyra is the most beautiful beautifier to ever beauty. They head to the ball and Ivan takes her aside to talk. Tonight is very important for me, he said. You will be on your best behaviour. You will laugh and talk only with the right people. You mean not Guardian, I said under my breath. You will be the perfect daughter and lady, he instructed. Do you understand me? I knew I should just agree. Really, there was no issue of me talking to Will, which was who he was actually talking about anyway. I understand, I replied, but it felt like a betrayal to myself. We get it. Ivan is awful. Again, would like to know why. I understand this is a YA book, but young adults are still humans. I mean, I feel like they're probably the more likely generation to be asking questions. You know, they're in that stage of their life where they're learning. Why are we infantilizing them and thinking they don't deserve explanations? They enter the party and are greeted by the Queen. She and Ivan go off to talk and Kyra goes up with Mia and Seth. Kyra runs into Pike at the drinks bar and asks him why he's here. He tells her he got hired by Isabel to keep her safe. We found out earlier that Mia had been hired by Ivan to do the same thing, so Kyra's confused. You know, why does she need 2 bodyguards? And why is Isabel so concerned about her well-being? I'm more confused as to why Mia and Pike are the only 2 Guardian they thought to hire. Are there not grown Guardian that would do a better job? You know, why teenagers? This place feels so small with such few reoccurring characters. I just keep wondering where everyone else is. They end up spotting Will chatting up Mia and Kyra feels her jealousy rising. Yeah, because it's okay for you to be jealous, but not Mia. Pike suggests they kiss to make him jealous. Gross. She refuses and storms across the room heading for Will and Mia. She tries to tell Mia to leave, but obviously can't force her. Will asks Mia to leave, and she does, kissing him on the cheek before going, making Kyra madder. She asks him why he is making this harder than it has to be. Why did he have to flirt with Mia in front of her when he could have chosen anyone? The conversation is interrupted by Prince Nathaniel and Kyra leaves with him. They end up sitting down and talking. My mother wanted to make the announcement soon, he said. The surprise announcement, I recalled. Yes, but I wanted to talk to you first before she said anything. I think you should know, so it's not dumped on you. Now I was really worried. What was this announcement, and why did I have to know? Kyra. Our parents made an arrange. Glass shattered above my head. Figures in black were entering the room. My heart caught in my chest, and my breath came in short, sharp bursts. Women screamed, and men stepped in front of them for protection. Glass from the window above us showered down on our heads, and Nate shielded me with his arm as I watched a figure fly overhead. "What's going on?" I asked. "Blooders." So the ball gets crashed by blooders. Mind you, this is happening 93% of the way into the book. Sure, that's fine. Not much room for resolution, but this is a 4-book series. Actually, more books when I actually had a look. There's like 0.5s and anyway. But there's just no build up to this. It came out of nowhere. There was no foreshadowing scenes that an attack was coming, so it was all very sudden. I knew it was going to happen because it always does. Not because I could see it building in the story. This book kind of makes you forget about the threat of blooders since it barely talks about them. It doesn't even explain the role of the Guardian in protecting the palace, so how are we supposed to know how much of a threat these guys were in the first place? Nathaniel calls on the Guardian to attack, and the book says 40 Guardians step forward but are outnumbered 2-1. So there's 80 attackers. It makes it seem like they're at a disadvantage, but 40 stepped forward instantly. Like, we're talking about a castle. Are there no other guards around the palace that should arrive momentarily? Like, you only gave them a few seconds to come to action. Unless there really isn't that many people in the compound, and that's why Pike, Mia, and Will are the only Guardian Ivan knows. I don't know, I'm just being annoying. Someone needs to tell me to shut up. Nathaniel tries to take Kyra to safety, but they run into some blooders. Nate stops to attack them, sending Kyra to keep running. She slips in some blood and is helped up by Pike, and they dodge and weave through the fight. Kyra feels very vulnerable here, which I liked. She's not trained for this, and it shows. She struggles with the scene in front of her, and it's realistic. I think that was really a good choice for her character. They get attacked by a blooder, and Pike engages, but gets shot across the room, leaving Kyra unprotected. Pike is able to send a shard of glass at the blooder before it gets too close, and Kyra is able to escape, running towards Isabel. They huddle together. "What's going on?" I demanded. Somehow I knew Isabel knew something about all of this. "Why did you hire Pike to guard me?" She was in shock, hysterics really, so I shook her hard. "Tell me." "I had to protect you," she muttered. "I knew they might come." "The blooders?" I asked. "How did you know they'd come to take people?" No, she said, holding on to me tighter. "They came for you." More questions that don't get answered. Great. But, sorry, still not convincing me to read the next book. So somehow Isabel knew the blooders were coming tonight, and for some reason they really want Kyra. This might help explain why she was kidnapped before she grew into her powers, but also her not father, Malcolm, appeared to work alone. How did he recruit all these blooders to come after her? I just have so many questions. These are always a bad sign when a book just keeps piling up questions and doesn't answer many. I just don't have hope that everything will get explained. And if they do, I just don't have faith it will be explained well. When you don't build up trust in your audience earlier on by answering some of these basic world-building questions, or just some of the plot questions, then I'm not going to be able to trust you to do it later. Or to answer the bigger questions later. Kyra ends up leaving the safety of her mother to go and help. Why she decided to help now but couldn't before, I'm not sure. Is it because she's watching the Guardian fight and that they're losing because the Djinn are refusing the fight? Which is like, then why were they doing all that training to fight if they weren't going to fight? That doesn't make sense. Shouldn't they have been training to do party tricks or something? Whatever. But she doesn't reflect on, wow, look at these guys guarding me and we're just letting them. I should stand up and fight. No, she just kind of observes this and then gets back out there. Even though before she couldn't stand the scene of the fight. Just adding a bit of inner introspection to kind of help explain her motives would be really beneficial here. I just have to read this line here for you. I feel bad for laughing at it, but I spotted Will on the far side of the ballroom. He was fighting two blooders at once. They circled him like foxes hunting a chicken. But Will was no chicken. No, he's a freaking dog. I don't know, but Will was no chicken. It just has me in stitches. Kyra notices a third blooder creeping up behind Will, so she heroically runs through the battlefield and jumps on the blooder's back, slamming him face first into the ground. They fight the other two blooders together, and Will realizes it's Kyra who is fighting with him and tries to get her to run and hide in safety. You need to get to safety, he said, looking for an exit to push me towards. No, I said, with more force than I knew I had. You can't fight them all on your own. The Guardian can handle this. They can't, I said, almost pleading. There are too many of them. The Guardian can't do all of this on their own. The Djinn need to help too. That's a nice gesture and all, but they'd rather flee than fight. You should be fleeing too. I won't see you get hurt. You don't have a choice in the matter, I said, pushing him away. This is my home too, and I won't let you or anyone else get hurt. I think it's a really powerful scene, but it also doesn't have the greatest build-up. Kyra seems to very easily go from Malcolm is my real dad to Malcolm is not my dad. But she also doesn't really seem to fit in here and never calls her parents mum or dad. But now this is her home too. I would have liked to see her talk more about feeling like home before we got to this scene, just so it made more sense. A blooder tries to attack them while they're in the middle of their chat, but Seth comes to the rescue with Prince Nathaniel. Will tries to get them all to leave, but Kyra stands her ground and asks the two to stay and fight as well. They agree, saying they're all in this together, and they work together to fight off the blooders. It starts to catch on, and other Djinn come out to fight alongside the Guardian. Kyra is suddenly grabbed by a blooder and is unable to escape. Pike and Will come to her aid, and her and Will have a moment which makes Pike jealous, since, he was technically the one to save her, really. He's standing there, sad and dejected, when suddenly he is killed by a blooder coming up and snapping his neck. Are you kidding me? Seriously, he just dies after seeing the person that he loves for some reason choose someone else. I understand people die in reality all the time with no rhyme or reason, but I just feel like if your character dies in a book and they were an important character, I just feel like they need more justification behind their death. This is just stupid. The whole being in love with Kyra thing was just stupid, and for him to die in a moment of rejection is just stupid. What was the point of learning about how his father died? That Kyra had a dream of Pike dying when the car her fake father was driving, only to have his neck snapped by a blooder? Wouldn't it have been more symbolic if he died the same way his dad did, trying to protect Kyra? I understand he saved Kyra and then he died, but I feel like he should have died while he was protecting Kyra. But no, we need to play up this all the boys love me fantasy, instead of writing an actual good story. I beta read a book that pissed me off like this. The character was introduced as a hothead, and throughout the book this temper and bullet-a-gate attitude got him into trouble, when suddenly it resulted in him killing somebody. The character then ended up having this reflective moment. Then he and the main character go out hunting for supplies, and the character, after killing a man because of his behavior, reverts back into his hot-headed nature and is suddenly shot and killed. Why did we have this reflective moment for him to forget it all and then die? Why couldn't we have a moment of him showing us that he learned from his mistakes, is cautious, and maybe sacrifices himself for the main character, showing that now he cares for others and not just himself anymore? Character arc. I do not like when characters just die for shock value. That has to be some kind of meaning. Even if they die just to show you that dying doesn't always need a meaning. I'm looking at you, Bojack. You've taken the time to grow and develop a character. Let's give them a proper send-off, not throw them to the wolves to beef up your favourite characters. Seriously, his death is just to get Kyra jacked up to get her to fight. Justice for Pike. I'm upset for him. Anyway, Kyra's devastated and she snaps. I had to stop them. I rose to my feet, letting Pike slip from my arms. Power courses through me like nothing I'd ever felt before. Kyra, what are you doing? Will asked, but it sounded like he was far away. I flicked my wrist and the blood flew across the ballroom and out through what remained of the windows. I turned my gaze on 3 blooders who were preoccupied drinking the blood of a fallen Djinn woman. Their heads rose, sensing my presence. Sickly smiles plastered their faces, sensing new prey, but I wasn't prey. I levitated glass shards from the floor. They hovered around me in suspended animation. The blooders' faces pale, knowing what was coming. I sent the glass shooting out like daggers and watched as the 3 blooders were cut to ribbons. Kyra, stop, Will said. This isn't you. You don't kill people. They killed Pike, I said. How did he not understand? He was killing blooders only moments before. I know they did, but you need to stop. You're not in control right now. It's dangerous to who? The blooders? I said, shouting. They should be scared. To you, Kyra. It's dangerous to you. I'd killed blooders. I'd tortured them before they died, and worst of all, I'd enjoyed killing them. This wasn't me. I had fought against Will for killing them. They killed Pike. So I killed them? An eye for an eye? No, that wasn't me. Again, a really strong emotional scene. But again, not great build-up. We don't see Kyra not wanting to kill people before this. We see it with Malcolm, but that's because she thought he was her father. But nowhere else is this really said before this fight scene. If we wanted this to be a really strong scene, we needed to see Kyra actively reject killing things beforehand to her detriment. Then this would really be impactful, seeing Kyra completely snap out of her very strong moral judgment because someone close to her died. I hear a lot about pantsing and planning when writing novels. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was this novel written in a pantsing format? Because if it was planned, then these scenes would have been built up earlier. I have no problem if people wants to pants a novel, but don't you go back and edit it so then you can include these moments? Because it really affects the strength of your storytelling. Having build up characterizes your characters. Having them do something to show their moral compass before you challenge it creates so much more depth in your character than when we connect with them, because we understand their reasonings. We understand why they make certain actions. I don't want to not know what the character will do next. I want to see the character make a decision and think, yeah, that makes sense for them. I don't care if the action is good or bad. I just want it to make sense. Jesus, I sound like a teacher. Don't forget to source your references. But it's true. I should be able to go back through your book and tie the character's later actions to something that did earlier in the story. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's more subtle than what I can notice, and this rant doesn't fit here. But I still think it holds. I know writing like this is hard. This is why I'm not an author. Yeah, it's too hard. I'm getting so worked up I'm sweating. Will ends up calming Kyra down, and Nate comes running over to tell them that the blooders are retreating and the fight has been won. And Kyra sort of reflects on maybe they had won, but at what cost? Everyone helps to recoup and recover, healing the injured and securing the compound. Kyra keeps commenting on people's appearances, that the Queen looked a mess and Millie still looked good disheveled. At least she has some thought that maybe this isn't the time, but for someone who likes to think she's better than all those girls at school because she doesn't care about her looks, she sure as hell cares a lot about others' looks. She mourns Pike's death, but again she only thinks of herself, Like, Will just lost a really close friend, but she's avoiding him because she can't face him after her killing spree. Like, girl, pull yourself together and go support the man. She goes around checking on people, but suddenly gets woozy and falls. Will and Nate fight over who's going to take care of her, because of course all the men in her proximity love her. But Will wins out and takes her to a room to lie down. Will tells her that the Djinn were taken by the Blooders. I'm not sure how they got them out, since they were being chased by the Guardian. Wouldn't the bodies have slowed them down? Did they use powers? And how? Doesn't matter. It does to me. Kyra breaks down again, understandably. This is a lot, and Will helps her. She tells him she just wants to go back to her old life before all of this, and before Will started hating her. She starts rambling about maybe she should have just accepted Pike's love, but she couldn't because she's in love with Will. In the heat of the moment, Will and Kyra share a passionate kiss, and he tells her that he also loves her. Aww. Kyra, I care about you more than anything. I love you. Then why did you push me away? I said, voice cracking. I'm sorry about the things I said, but I needed to push you away. Djinn and Djinn can't be together. I don't care. Surely after everything that's happened, you can't still think that. Djinn and Djinn are the same. I think it more now than ever, he said. The Djinn are in danger, and they need the Djinn to protect them. I can protect you, but I can't be with you. The book ends with Kyra thinking to herself that there are too many questions, but she wants answers, and that even though she now accepts this as her home, she's going to make sure things change around here. Like, yeah, me too. I want answers. Wish we could have actually answered some here, but whatever. I'm not desperate enough to read the other books. Yet. Anyway, that was Djinn. Well done to Laura for publishing. That's a big achievement. But just because you do something cool doesn't mean I have to like it. I still don't really understand what the plot was supposed to be. What were they working towards? What is the reason for everything happening? What was the purpose of telling this story? I still don't understand it. Sure, have mysteries that need to be answered, but the plot shouldn't be a mystery as well. What's everybody's goal? What lesson am I supposed to learn? I don't know. I feel like I'm blind being led by a very enthusiastic golden retriever. Where are we going? Nobody knows. The dog sure as hell doesn't. I don't like the characters. Nothing seems planned. Things don't tie back to earlier scenes. Characters weren't consistent. No one seemed to have goals. I don't have any stakes in the story because I don't know what's happening. I just have too many questions and not enough answers to keep me interested. I just don't like it. But I hope maybe you will.